They say revenge is a dish best served cold. But sometimes, it's served on a silver platter at a luxury wedding, dressed in designer heels, and carrying 3 pieces of living evidence that can destroy a man's entire world in seconds. Ladies and gentlemen, the wedding host's voice boomed through the crystal-clear sound system, echoing across the sprawling Texas estate. Let us welcome the stunning couple of the year, Mr. and Mrs. Williams. The crowd erupted like champagne bubbles bursting from a shaken bottle. 300 guests rose to their feet in a wave of designer dresses and custom-tailored tuxedos. Smartphones emerged from Prada clutches and Armani jacket pockets, camera flashes creating a constellation of light beneath the massive white tent. This wasn't just a wedding. This was a spectacle. Crystal chandeliers hung from the tent's ceiling like frozen waterfalls, each one worth more than most people's annual salary. The tables, 50 of them, arranged in perfect symmetry, were draped in gold and ivory silk that caught the afternoon light and seemed to glow. White roses, imported from Ecuador, filled every corner with their heavy, expensive perfume. The guest list read like a Forbes magazine feature. Tech moguls, oil tycoons, celebrity influencers, politicians, and old money families whose names have been synonymous with power for generations. Everyone who mattered in Texas society was here, and at the center of it all stood Jason Williams. At 35, Jason looked like he'd been carved from marble by a sculptor obsessed with perfection. His custom white tuxedo, tailored in Milan, fit him like a second skin. His dark hair was swept back with just enough product to look effortless. His smile, that million-dollar smile, flashed white against his tan skin as he raised his champagne glass to acknowledge the cheering crowd. Beside him, Madison Clark was the embodiment of bridal perfection. Her wedding dress, a Vera Wang original worth 6 figures, sparkled with thousands of hand-sewn crystals. Her blonde hair was arranged in an elegant updo that had required 3 hours and 2 hairstylists to achieve. Her crystal blue eyes sparkled as she waved to the crowd like royalty acknowledging their subjects. They looked like they'd stepped out of a magazine, like a fairy tale come to life, like nothing could possibly go wrong. The string quartet began playing, a classical piece that filled the air with romance and sophistication. Waiters in white gloves glided between tables, refilling champagne flutes with vintage cristal. The 7-tier wedding cake, decorated with edible gold leaf and sugar flowers, stood in the corner like an edible work of art. Jason leaned close to Madison, whispering something that made her laugh, that practiced, elegant laugh she'd perfected for public appearances. He kissed her cheek, careful not to smudge her makeup, and the cameras went wild. This was the moment they'd planned for months. The wedding of the season. The union of 2 powerful families. The beginning of an empire. Everything was perfect. And then, it happened. The change was subtle at first. A slight ripple in the sea of celebration. Someone near the entrance stopped clapping. Then another. Then a whole table went silent. It spread like a virus through the crowd. Conversations cutting off mid-sentence. Laughter dying in throats. Champagne glasses freezing halfway to lips. Heads began turning. Slowly at first, then faster, creating a wave that swept from the back of the venue toward the front. Is that? Someone whispered. No, it can't be. Oh my God. A woman in a designer hat gasped so loudly it cut through the music like a knife. The string quartet, sensing something was wrong, trailed off mid-note, their bows hovering uncertainly over the strings. Jason, still smiling, noticed the shift in energy. His eyebrows furrowed slightly as he looked out at the crowd, trying to understand what had stolen his moment. Madison felt it too. Her perfectly practiced smile flickered for just a second as she followed the crowd's collective gaze toward the driveway. And that's when they saw it. Down the tree-lined driveway, moving with the unhurried confidence of someone who knew every eye was on them, came a sleek black limousine. Not just any limousine. A Rolls-Royce Phantom, the kind of car that cost more than most houses. Its polished surface gleamed like black diamond in the afternoon sun. The engine purred with a quiet power that somehow managed to be both whisper-soft and intimidating. The limousine rolled to a stop at the red carpet that led to the wedding tent. For a moment, nothing happened. The entire venue held its breath. Then the driver's door opened. A man in his 60s stepped out, impeccably dressed in a black suit with white gloves, moving with the practiced precision of someone who'd spent decades in service to the wealthy. He walked around the car with measured steps and positioned himself at the rear passenger door. His white-gloved hand reached for the handle. The door opened, and she stepped out. Emily Carter. No, not Carter anymore. She dropped that name 3 years ago, along with everything else from her old life. Now she was simply Emily. Emily, who had been erased from Jason Williams' perfect story. Emily, who wasn't supposed to exist anymore in his world of champagne and crystal chandeliers. But here she was, very much existing. The transformation was staggering. The last time anyone in this crowd had seen Emily, she'd been wearing Target clearance clothes and carrying bags under her eyes from working 2 jobs. She'd been the poor girl Jason had married in a moment of what his mother called temporary insanity. The nobody from nowhere who everyone knew didn't belong. But the woman who stepped out of that Rolls Royce wasn't that Emily anymore. Her hair, once pulled back in a tired ponytail, now fell in glossy waves down her shoulders, the kind of hair that came from expensive salons and even more expensive products. Her makeup was flawless, highlighting cheekbones that looked sharper, more defined, as if success had literally reshaped her face. Around her neck sat a diamond necklace that caught the light and threw it back in 1,000 directions. Not the kind of diamonds you found at mall jewelry stores. These were the real thing, the kind that came with insurance policies and security guards. And her dress. My God, her dress. Emerald green, the color of money and envy. It hugged every curve with the confidence of haute couture. The fabric shimmered when she moved, like she was wrapped in liquid jewelry. Her heels, 6-inch Louboutins with their signature red soles, clicked against the marble pathway with the sharp precision of a countdown timer. She moved like she owned the place, like she owned the whole damn world. But that wasn't even the most shocking part. Behind Emily, 3 small figures emerged from the limousine. Children, triplets, to be exact. They looked to be about 3 years old. A boy with serious dark eyes, another boy with his brother's same intense gaze, and a little girl whose curls bounced as she climbed carefully out of the car. They were dressed in matching white outfits that looked like they'd come from a boutique that specialized in dressing celebrity children. The little girl held her brother's hands as they stood together, forming a small unit of innocence in the middle of all this adult drama. And here's the thing that made the entire crowd's jaw drop collectively. They looked exactly like Jason. The same dark hair, the same strong jawline already visible even in their baby faces. The same eyebrows, the same way of standing with their shoulders just slightly back, like they were born knowing they were important. There was no mistaking it. These children were William's children. The whispers exploded like fireworks. Are those? They can't be. How old are they? 3 years? But that would mean... Oh my God, he didn't. He has no idea, does he? Madison's perfectly manicured hand tightened on Jason's arm. Her smile, which had been frozen on her face, finally cracked. Jason, she hissed through her still smiling lips, her voice tight with barely controlled panic. Who is that? Jason didn't answer. He couldn't. His champagne glass slipped from his fingers as if his body had forgotten how to hold things. The crystal shattered on the marble floor with a sound that seemed impossibly loud in the sudden near silence. He stared at Emily like he was seeing a ghost. His face had gone pale beneath his tan. His mouth opened, then closed, then opened again, but no words came out. Because Jason Williams, the man who always had something to say, who commanded boardrooms and negotiated million-dollar deals with confidence, had been struck completely speechless. Emily stood at the edge of the red carpet, one hand resting gently on her daughter's shoulder, looking directly at Jason. She didn't smile. She didn't glare. Her expression was calm, almost serene, like someone who'd been waiting for this moment for a very long time and was savoring every second of it. The afternoon sun caught the diamonds at her throat and sent light dancing across the crowd. She looked like power personified, like justice dressed in designer clothes, like every woman who'd ever been underestimated and discarded, coming back to collect what was owed. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. 300 of Texas's most powerful people stood frozen, their phones still out, now recording what was quickly becoming the scandal of the decade. And then, just as Emily took her first step onto the red carpet, her heels clicking with deliberate slowness, just as Jason finally seemed to find his voice, just as Madison's face began to contort from confusion to understanding to rage, a scream tore through the air. It came from somewhere behind the wedding tent, sharp and terrified and utterly out of place in this world of carefully orchestrated perfection. Everyone turned. The spell broke. People started moving, rushing toward the source of the sound. And Emily stopped mid-step, her emerald dress swaying slightly, as chaos erupted around her. Something had just shattered Jason's perfect day even more completely than Emily's arrival ever could. And as she stood there, watching the crowd scatter like startled birds, watching Jason torn between staring at her and running toward the commotion, watching his perfect wedding dissolve into pandemonium, Emily realized something. She hadn't even said a word yet, hadn't revealed her truth, hadn't played any of her cards, and somehow, the universe had decided to throw in its own plot twist first. The triplets pressed closer to her legs, scared by the sudden chaos. Emily's driver, Mr. Benson, moved protectively to her side. "Ma'am," he said quietly, "perhaps we should." "No." Emily interrupted softly, her eyes still locked on Jason as he stumbled away from the altar, Madison's voice shrieking questions behind him. We're not leaving. Not yet. Because whatever had just happened, whatever had caused that scream, Emily had a feeling it was connected to the very reason she'd come here today. Some secrets, she'd learned, have a way of exploding all at once. And Jason Williams' perfect world was about to learn that lesson the hard way. But before we dive into the chaos that's about to unfold, I need to know, if you were Emily, would you have shown up to your ex-husband's wedding? Would you have brought the children he never knew existed? Or would you have stayed away and let him live his lie in peace? Drop your answer in the comments. Because what happens next is going to force everyone, Emily, Jason, and every guest at that wedding, to face truths they've been running from for 3 years. There's a special kind of chaos that erupts when perfect people realize their carefully constructed facades are crumbling. And on that golden afternoon in Texas, 3 years of lies, secrets, and buried truths decided to claw their way to the surface all at once. The scream came again, louder this time, more desperate. Someone call an ambulance. Now, the wedding guests, who moments ago had been the picture of sophisticated elegance, now scrambled like confused children. Designer heels caught in grass. Tuxedo tails flew behind running men. The carefully arranged tables became obstacles as people pushed past them, champagne glasses toppling and shattering. Emily stood perfectly still amid the chaos, an island of calm in a sea of panic. Her children pressed against her legs, their small hands gripping the emerald fabric of her dress. Little Emma looked up at her mother with wide, frightened eyes. "Mommy, what's happening?" she whispered. Emily stroked her daughter's hair gently, her gaze never leaving the direction of the commotion. "I don't know yet, baby, but we're safe. I promise." Mr. Benson, her driver, stepped closer. He was an older man, dignified, with silver hair and the kind of steady presence that came from decades of serving wealthy families. He'd worked for Emily for only 6 months, but he'd already proven himself loyal beyond measure. "Mrs. Emily," he said quietly, using the title she preferred, "we should move the children to the car. Whatever's happening." "No." Emily's voice was soft, but absolute. "I need to see this." Because she knew. Somehow, in that moment, she knew this wasn't random. Nothing about today was random. She'd come here with a purpose, and the universe seemed determined to help her fulfill it in the most dramatic way possible. Jason had broken away from Madison and was sprinting toward the far end of the garden, his expensive shoes slipping slightly on the manicured grass. Madison stood at the altar, one hand pressed to her chest, torn between following him and maintaining her composure for the cameras that were still, horrifyingly, recording everything. "Jason," Madison called out, her voice cracking. Jason, wait. But he didn't wait. He couldn't, because the crowd was parting now, creating a path, and Emily could see 2 security guards in black suits carrying someone between them. A woman. Her champagne-colored dress was stained with something dark, her head lolled to one side. Her skin had taken on an ashen quality that made Emily's stomach tighten with recognition. She'd seen that color before. 3 years ago, in the hospital, when her mother had. Jason's voice cut through the chaos, high and panicked in a way Emily had never heard before. "Mom," and that's when Emily understood. Evelyn Williams, Jason's mother. The woman who had looked at Emily with such undisguised contempt from the very first day they met. The woman who had whispered poison in her son's ear until he'd convinced himself that divorcing Emily was the right thing to do. The woman who had called Emily the help at family dinners and asked her if she knew how to use the fancy silverware. That woman was now being carried through her son's wedding like a broken doll. "Get the medics," one of the security guards shouted. She collapsed near the champagne fountain. Jason reached his mother just as they lowered her onto the grass. He fell to his knees beside her, his pristine white tuxedo immediately stained with grass and dirt. His hands hovered over her, unsure where to touch, how to help. Mom, can you hear me?" His voice was shaking now, all the smooth confidence gone. "Talk to me, please." Evelyn's eyes fluttered open. Her lips moved, but no sound came out at first. Jason leaned closer, his ear nearly touching her mouth. "Jason," she whispered, so faint that only he could hear. "She knows." "Who knows what, Mom? What are you talking about?" "Emily." Evelyn's hand grabbed his sleeve with surprising strength for someone who looked so weak. "She knows about the money." And then her eyes rolled back and her body went limp. No. Jason's voice cracked. "Where's the ambulance? Where is it?" A woman in the crowd, a doctor, from the way she pushed through with authority, knelt beside Evelyn and checked her pulse. "She's breathing, but it's weak. We need to get her to a hospital immediately." Madison finally made it through the crowd, her wedding dress trailing behind her like a white banner. She looked down at Evelyn, at Jason's panicked face, and something shifted in her expression. It wasn't quite concern. It was more like calculation. "Jason," she said, her voice controlled despite everything. "What did she say? What was she trying to tell you?" I don't know. Something about Emily. Something about money." He looked up suddenly, his eyes scanning the crowd until they found her. Emily, still standing at the edge of everything, watching, always watching. Their eyes met across the chaos. And in that moment, something unspoken passed between them. A recognition, a challenge, a promise that this was far from over. The wail of sirens cut through the air. The ambulance was coming. But to understand what was really happening here, we need to go back. Back to when Emily Carter was a completely different person. Back to when she believed in fairy tales and second chances and the power of love to overcome anything. 3 years ago, Emily lived in a modest apartment in Houston. Not the bad part of town, but not the good part either. The kind of place where the walls were thin enough to hear your neighbors' conversations and the water pressure was more of a suggestion than a guarantee. She worked 2 jobs. During the day, she was a receptionist at a dental office, smiling at patients and scheduling appointments. At night, she waitressed at a family restaurant, serving burgers and fries to people who sometimes tipped well and often didn't. Emily never complained. That wasn't who she was. She'd been raised by a single mother who taught her that hard work and kindness were the only currencies that truly mattered. Even when her feet ached and her back hurt, and she was so tired she could barely see straight, Emily smiled. She helped others. She believed in being good. And that's exactly what made Jason fall in love with her. They met at a charity fundraiser. Emily had volunteered to help serve food because the event was raising money for children's literacy programs, and she believed in the cause. Jason was there because his mother had insisted. It was good for the family image to be seen supporting worthy causes. He noticed her immediately, not because she was the most beautiful woman in the room, though she was beautiful in that natural, unpolished way that money can't buy. No, he noticed her because she treated everyone the same. She smiled at the billionaire philanthropist with the same warmth she showed the janitor. She listened when people talked to her, really listened, like their words mattered. Jason, who'd spent his entire life surrounded by people who wanted something from him, found it intoxicating. "You don't know who I am, do you?" he'd asked her, amused, as she handed him a plate. Emily had looked at him with those honest brown eyes and shrugged. "Should I?" And just like that, Jason Williams was hooked. For 6 months, Jason pursued Emily like a man possessed. He showed up at her restaurant. He sent flowers to the dental office. He took her on dates that seemed impossibly romantic. Picnics in the park, walks along the river, coffee shops where they talked for hours. He never mentioned his wealth, never flashed his credit cards or bragged about his family's business empire. With Emily, he got to be just Jason. Just a man falling in love with a woman who saw him, not his bank account. "You're different from anyone I've ever met," he told her one evening as they sat on her apartment's tiny balcony, sharing takeout Chinese food. "You're real." Emily had laughed, her head tilting back. "As opposed to what?" "Imaginary. As opposed to fake. Everyone in my world is performing all the time. But you? You're just you." And he'd meant it. At least, Emily had believed he meant it. They got married a year after they met. Small ceremony. 20 people. Emily wore a simple white dress from a department store. Jason wore a suit he'd bought specifically because it wasn't designer, because he wanted this day to be about them, not about status or money. His parents didn't come. They'd made their feelings clear. "She's beneath you," his mother, Evelyn, had said coldly when Jason announced the engagement. "She's using you for your money. She doesn't even know about the money," Jason had argued. "I haven't told her." "Oh, she knows. Women like that always know. They can smell wealth like bloodhounds." But Jason had been certain his mother was wrong. He'd married Emily anyway, convinced that love conquered all. He'd been so young, so stupid, so devastatingly naive about how the world really worked. The problem started slowly. Like cancer, you didn't notice until it had already spread too far to stop. Jason brought Emily to meet his parents formally after the wedding. The Williams family estate was everything Emily's world wasn't. Sprawling, cold, filled with art that cost more than she'd make in a lifetime. Evelyn Williams looked at Emily the way someone might look at dirt tracked onto expensive carpet. With disgust. With the kind of contempt that said, without words, that Emily would never belong here. "So," Evelyn had said at their first family dinner, her voice dripping with false sweetness, "Emily, dear, Jason tells us you work as a receptionist?" "Yes, ma'am. At Dr. Patterson's dental office." "How quaint." Evelyn picked up her wine glass. "And you also wait tables, I understand?" "In the evenings, yes." "Must be exhausting." Evelyn's smile didn't reach her eyes. "Tell me, do you plan to continue working after you've settled into being a Williams?" The emphasis on the name made it clear that Evelyn didn't believe Emily would ever truly be a Williams. Not really. Not where it mattered. Jason had defended her that night. "Mom, Emily's work ethic is admirable. She's not like the trust fund kids you usually try to set me up with." But the damage was done, and it kept happening. Every family gathering, every business dinner Jason brought her to, every charity event where Emily felt the eyes of Jason's social circle examining her like a specimen under glass. The whispers followed her everywhere. "That's Jason's wife? I thought he was joking. Where did he even find her?" Give it a year, 2 at most. And slowly, insidiously, Jason started to change. It started with late nights at the office, then business trips that lasted longer than they should. Phone calls Jason would take in another room. Texts that made him smile in ways he didn't smile at Emily anymore. Emily noticed. Of course she noticed. But she believed in fighting for her marriage. She believed in patience and understanding and giving people the benefit of the doubt. She made his favorite meals. She kept the apartment spotless. She wore the clothes his mother suggested, trying to fit into a world that clearly didn't want her. "You're trying too hard." Jason snapped at her one evening when she asked about his day. "Can you just give me some space? I'm your wife," Emily had said quietly. "I'm supposed to ask about your day." "Well, maybe I'm tired of feeling guilty for having a life you're not part of." The words had hit like a slap. But Emily had swallowed her hurt and tried harder. Until the December evening when everything shattered beyond repair. Emily had left work early, excited because she'd managed to afford Jason's favorite steak for dinner. She'd been planning to surprise him, to remind him of the early days when they'd eat takeout and laugh and talk for hours. She'd opened the door to their apartment, the grocery bag in her arms, a smile on her face. And there he was, on their couch, with Madison Clark. They weren't just talking. Jason's hand was in Madison's perfectly highlighted hair. Her arms were around his neck. They were kissing like the world was ending, and they were the only 2 people left in it. The grocery bag fell from Emily's hands. The steak hit the floor. The sound made them break apart. Jason's face went through a series of expressions in rapid succession. Surprise, guilt, annoyance, and then, most devastating of all, relief. Relief that he'd been caught. Relief that he didn't have to pretend anymore. "Emily," he said, standing up, not even trying to sound sorry. "We need to talk." Madison didn't look apologetic either. She smiled. Actually smiled. Like she'd won some prize. And that's when Emily understood. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't a moment of weakness. This was a choice. A deliberate, calculated choice. "How long?" Emily's voice came out as a whisper. "Does it matter?" Jason ran his hand through his hair. "Look, this isn't working. You know it isn't. I tried, Emily. God knows I tried. But you don't fit in my world. You never did. I'm your wife. You're a mistake I made when I was young and stupid and thought love was enough." The cruelty in his voice was almost clinical. "Madison understands me. She comes from my world. She knows how to handle the pressure, the expectations. She's who I should have been with from the start." Emily had stood there, frozen, as the man she'd loved explained why their marriage was over in the same tone he might use to explain a business deal. The divorce was a massacre. Jason's lawyers were sharks in expensive suits. They painted Emily as a gold digger who'd trapped a wealthy man into marriage. They brought up her 2 jobs, suggesting she'd been desperate for financial security. They made her poverty sound like a crime. "Your Honor," Jason's lead attorney had said in that courtroom, his voice smooth and confident. "Ms. Carter married my client knowing full well about his family's wealth and position. She contributed nothing to the marriage. No financial assets, no social connections, nothing of value. She was, quite simply, a burden." Emily's lawyer, a kind man working pro bono because she couldn't afford better, tried to fight back. But how do you fight an empire? How do you win when the other side has unlimited resources and you have nothing? Jason himself testified. He sat in that witness box and spoke about Emily like she was a stranger. Like the year they'd spent together meant nothing. Like every kiss, every laugh, every whispered promise in the dark had been erased from his memory. "I realized I'd made a mistake," he said calmly. "I let infatuation cloud my judgment. But Madison helped me see clearly. She helped me understand what I really needed in a partner." Emily wanted to scream, to rage, to tell the court about the Jason who'd held her when she cried about her mother's death. The Jason who'd said he loved her eyes because they were kind. The Jason who'd promised that they'd face everything together. But that Jason was gone. Maybe he'd never existed at all. The judgment came down hard. Jason kept the apartment, the car, the savings account they'd built together, though most of it had been his money anyway. Emily walked away with almost nothing. A small settlement that wouldn't last 6 months, and a restraining order that said she couldn't contact him or come within 500 feet of him or his property. She signed the papers with shaking hands. her heart breaking with each stroke of the pen. And then she walked out of that courthouse into the winter cold, alone and destroyed. But not completely alone, because inside her, 3 tiny hearts had just begun to beat. Emily discovered she was pregnant 2 weeks after the divorce was finalized. She'd been feeling sick for days, exhausted beyond what 2 jobs could explain. At first, she thought it was just stress, heartbreak taking its toll on her body. But then she missed her period, and another. And finally, sitting in a free clinic because she couldn't afford a regular doctor, she heard the words that would change everything. "Congratulations, Miss Carter. You're pregnant. And from the ultrasound, it looks like triplets." Triplets. 3 babies. Jason's babies. Growing inside her while he married another woman and built a new life that had no room for Emily in it. She'd sat in her car for an hour after that appointment, staring at the grainy ultrasound photos, trying to decide what to do. She could tell Jason. She had that right. These were his children too. But then she remembered his face in that courtroom. The coldness, the contempt, the way he'd called her a burden. Would he even believe they were his? Or would he accuse her of lying, of trying to trap him again? Would his lawyers claim she'd gotten pregnant deliberately, trying to secure child support from a wealthy man? And even if he believed her, did she want her children growing up in that world? In the Williams family, where love was conditional and kindness was seen as weakness. Where Evelyn Williams would look at her grandchildren with the same contempt she'd shown Emily. No, Emily made a choice that night. A choice that some would call brave and others would call selfish. She decided to disappear, to raise these children alone, to protect them from a father who'd proven he was capable of throwing away love like yesterday's trash. She left Houston the next day with everything she owned stuffed into 2 suitcases and her car's trunk. She drove to Austin, where nobody knew her name or her story, where she could start over, completely and entirely. And that's exactly what she did. The first year was hell. Emily worked 3 jobs while pregnant with triplets. She waitressed until she was 8 months along, her swollen feet barely fitting into her work shoes. She did data entry from home in the middle of the night, her fingers cramping as she typed. She cleaned houses on weekends, scrubbing other people's toilets while her own babies kicked inside her. She slept maybe 3 hours a night. She ate ramen and peanut butter sandwiches because they were cheap. She cried herself to sleep more times than she could count, wondering if she'd made a terrible mistake, wondering if her children would hate her someday for depriving them of a father with resources. But she never gave up. Not once. The triplets were born on a rainy Tuesday morning in April. Ethan came first, screaming his arrival with impressive lung power. Elijah followed 3 minutes later, quieter but no less determined. And Emma, her little girl, arrived last, looking around with curious eyes as if wondering what all the fuss was about. Emily held them and felt something inside her heal and break simultaneously. Love. Fierce, overwhelming, all-consuming love. "You are mine," she whispered to them in that hospital room. "Mine to protect, mine to raise, and I will make sure you have everything you need. I promise." And somehow, impossibly, she kept that promise. 6 months after the triplets were born, Emily met Mrs. Rodriguez. Maria Rodriguez was in her 60s, a widow who owned a small cafe where Emily would sometimes bring the babies when she needed to feel human. Mrs. Rodriguez would coo over the triplets and slip Emily free coffee and pastries when she thought Emily wasn't looking. One day, Mrs. Rodriguez sat down across from Emily and said, "Mija, you can't keep living like this. You're going to break." "I'm fine," Emily lied. "You're not fine. You're drowning. But you don't have to." Mrs. Rodriguez leaned forward. "I see something in you. Strength. Intelligence. The kind of fire that can't be put out. You just need someone to believe in you." And that's exactly what Mrs. Rodriguez did. She introduced Emily to a tech investor friend who was looking for fresh ideas. Emily, desperate and with nothing to lose, pitched an idea she'd been nurturing in the back of her mind. A wellness app that combined mental health resources with fitness tracking and community support. The investor took a chance. A small chance. Just enough seed money to build a prototype. Emily poured everything into it. Every spare moment she wasn't caring for the triplets went into building her business. She taught herself coding from YouTube videos. She learned about marketing and branding and user experience. She worked until her eyes burned and her head pounded. And slowly, incredibly, it started to work. The app launched. Users trickled in. Then more came. Then it went viral on TikTok. Then celebrities started posting about it. Then investors started calling. Within 18 months, Emily's wellness brand was worth $10 million. Within 2 years, it hit $50 million. Emily Carter, the woman Jason Williams had called a burden, had become a self-made millionaire. She bought a house, not a mansion, but a real house with a yard where her children could play. She hired help, so she wasn't drowning anymore. She took the triplets to museums and parks and made sure they knew they were loved every single day. And through it all, she never once regretted her choice to raise them alone. Until the wedding invitation arrived. The envelope was cream-colored, expensive paper with gold embossing. Emily almost didn't open it. She got a lot of fancy mail now, invitations to galas, networking events, conferences. But something made her open this one. Inside was a wedding invitation. Jason Williams and Madison Clark. It read in elegant script, "Request the honor of your presence at their wedding ceremony." Emily stared at it for a long moment, her brain struggling to process. Why would Jason invite her to his wedding? They hadn't spoken in 3 years. She was literally the last person who should be on that guest list. Unless... She flipped the invitation over. On the back, in handwriting she recognized as Jason's, was a single sentence. "Thought you'd want to see what a real wedding looks like. Jay?" And there it was. The cruelty, the pettiness, the need to grind her face in his success one more time. Jason had sent this invitation to humiliate her. He assumed she was still poor, still struggling, still the broken woman he'd left behind. He wanted her to see him marry Madison in a ceremony that would cost more than Emily used to make in a year. He wanted her to feel small. Emily stood in her beautiful house, surrounded by evidence of everything she'd built, and felt something shift inside her. Not anger exactly, something colder, more focused. She walked to her calendar and circled the wedding date. Then she called Mr. Benson, her driver, and started making plans. Because Jason Williams was about to learn something important. You don't humiliate a woman who's already survived being destroyed by you. You definitely don't do it when she's spent 3 years becoming someone you never imagined she could be. And you absolutely don't do it when she's bringing your children, the children you never knew existed, to witness your carefully constructed lies fall apart. The ambulance had arrived now. Paramedics rushing to load Evelyn onto a stretcher. Jason climbed in beside his mother, his face pale, his wedding completely forgotten. Madison stood outside the ambulance, her perfect makeup starting to run as tears mixed with mascara. "Jason, what about?" "Later," he snapped, not even looking at her. "Just handle things here." The ambulance doors slammed shut, sirens wailed, and Jason Williams disappeared toward the hospital, leaving his bride standing alone at what was supposed to be her perfect wedding. The guests stood in shocked clusters, whispering, phones out, already posting to social media. This was the scandal of the decade, and everyone wanted to be the first to share it. And Emily? Emily stood at the edge of it all, her children pressed against her sides, watching everything unfold exactly as chaos had planned, but not quite as she'd expected. Because she'd come here to reveal the truth about Jason's children, to expose his abandonment, to make him face what he'd done. But Evelyn's collapse had stolen that moment. And whatever Evelyn had been trying to say, something about Emily, something about money, had planted a seed of suspicion that was already spreading through the crowd. Madison turned suddenly, her eyes landing on Emily. She walked over, her wedding dress trailing through grass and dirt, no longer pristine. "You," Madison said, her voice shaking. "You're Emily, his ex-wife." "I am. And those?" Madison looked at the triplets. "Those are his children." It wasn't a question. Madison wasn't stupid. She could see what everyone else could see. Emily didn't answer. She didn't need to. Madison laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. It was the laugh of someone whose world had just revealed itself to be built on lies. "He told me you were nobody, that you disappeared, that you were probably living in a trailer park somewhere, working at Walmart. People see what they want to see," Emily said quietly. "How long have you known? About us? About the wedding?" "I got the invitation 3 weeks ago." Madison's face twisted. "And you came anyway? With his children? To what? Ruin everything?" Emily looked at her, really looked at her. Madison wasn't much older than Emily had been when she'd married Jason. She was beautiful and confident, and probably thought she knew exactly what she was getting into. But she had no idea. She couldn't see that Jason Williams collected women like trophies and discarded them just as easily. She didn't understand that the same man who'd thrown Emily away would eventually do the same to her when someone shinier came along. "I didn't come to ruin anything," Emily said softly. "I came to tell the truth. What happens after that? That's up to Jason. But here's what I need you to think about. When someone shows you who they really are the first time, should you believe them? Or do people truly deserve second chances, even after they've destroyed everything?" Because the truth was finally coming out. All of it. Evelyn's secret. The children Jason never knew about. The life Emily had built from nothing while he paraded around thinking he'd won. And when Jason returned from that hospital, he was going to have to face it all, whether he was ready or not. So here's the question that hung in the air like smoke after an explosion. What do you do when the perfect life you've built is revealed to be nothing but a house of cards, and the woman you destroyed is standing there, waiting to watch it all collapse? 2 hours. That's how long the wedding guests waited, standing in awkward clusters under that massive white tent, unsure whether to stay or leave, unable to tear themselves away from what was clearly becoming the most dramatic social event in Texas history. The catering staff had given up on maintaining the elegant presentation. Half-eaten plates littered tables. Champagne had gone flat in abandoned glasses. The 7-tier cake stood untouched, a monument to a celebration that never was. Madison had disappeared into the mansion, Jason's family estate, leaving her bridesmaids to handle the chaos. Several of them were crying, their perfect makeup streaking down their faces. The groomsmen stood in uncomfortable silence, checking their phones obsessively for updates. And Emily? Emily had moved to a quiet corner of the garden with her children. The triplets sat on a marble bench, tired but remarkably patient. Ethan had fallen asleep with his head on his sister's shoulder. Elijah was asking questions in that persistent way 3-year-olds do. Mommy, when can we go home? Soon, baby. Why is everyone sad? Emily smoothed his hair. Because sometimes grown-ups make choices that hurt people. And those choices catch up to them eventually. What kind of choices? How do you explain betrayal to a 3-year-old? How do you tell your children that their father didn't want them before he even knew they existed? Complicated ones, Emily said finally. You'll understand when you're older. Mr. Benson stood nearby, ever watchful. Mrs. Emily, we could still leave. You've made your point. Let Mr. Williams deal with his mother's situation. This isn't your fight anymore. But Emily shook her head. This stopped being about revenge the moment Evelyn collapsed. She said something about money. About me knowing something. Whatever secret she's been keeping, it involves me. I need to hear this. The garden was beautiful, even in chaos. White roses climbed trellises. A fountain trickled peacefully, oblivious to the human drama unfolding around it. The late afternoon sun cast golden light over everything, making even the disaster look picturesque. Emily's phone buzzed. A text from Mrs. Rodriguez. Mija, I'm seeing photos online. Are you okay? Do you need me to come? Emily smiled despite everything. I'm fine. I'll call you later. This needed to happen. Another text, this one from her business partner. Emily, you're trending on Twitter. #WeddingCrasher is the #1 topic in the US right now. Your face is everywhere. Should I prepare a statement? Emily looked at the phone, then at her sleeping son, then at the mansion where Jason's entire world was imploding. No statement, she texted back. Let the truth speak for itself. At Memorial Hospital, Jason sat beside his mother's bed, his white tuxedo now rumpled and stained. Evelyn was awake now, hooked up to machines that beeped steadily. The doctors had stabilized her. A panic attack, they said, combined with dangerously high blood pressure. But it was what she'd said in the ambulance that haunted Jason. Mom, he said quietly, leaning forward. What did you mean? About Emily? About money? Evelyn's eyes flickered with something. Fear, maybe, or guilt, but she looked away. I don't know what you're talking about. I was delirious. No, Jason's voice was harder now. You said she knows. What does Emily know? Silence. The machines beeped. In the hallway, a cart rattled past. Mom, I need you to tell me the truth. Because my ex-wife just showed up at my wedding with 3 children who look exactly like me. 3 children I knew nothing about. And somehow you're connected to this. So start talking. Evelyn closed her eyes, and for a moment, Jason thought she might refuse. But then, in a voice barely above a whisper, she began to confess. The settlement, she said. The divorce settlement. It wasn't what we told you. Jason's blood ran cold. What do you mean? You gave her $50,000. That's what the papers said. That's what you thought. And I added a clause. Through our lawyers, Emily had to sign away all future claims to your assets, any inheritance, any connection to the Williams family. Forever. In exchange for what, Mom? Jason's voice was deadly quiet now. $500,000. Evelyn's words came out in a rush. I paid her $500,000 to disappear. To never contact you again. To never tell you if there were any complications. The room seemed to tilt. Complications? I knew she might be pregnant. The timeline, it was possible. So I made sure the agreement covered any children that might result from the marriage. She signed it. She took the money and signed away any rights to claim you as their father. Jason stood up so fast his chair fell backward. You knew? You knew there might be children and you paid her to keep them from me. I was protecting you. Evelyn's voice rose, desperate. She was nothing, Jason. A nobody who trapped you into marriage. I was ensuring your future, your real future, with someone appropriate. She didn't trap me. I loved her. The words exploded out of him. And you paid her $500,000 to disappear with my children? They're not your children if she accepted the terms. Legally, you have no claim. Jason's laugh was bitter and broken. I don't give a damn about legally. Those are my kids, Mom. My children. And you robbed me of 3 years with them. I saved you from a lifetime of obligation to the wrong woman. Jason looked at his mother lying in that hospital bed, and suddenly he saw her clearly for the first time in his life. Not as the strong matriarch protecting her family, not as the wise counselor guiding his choices, but as a manipulative, cruel woman who'd controlled him his entire life and destroyed anything that threatened that control. Emily never cashed the check, did she? Jason said slowly, realization dawning. That's why you said she knows. She knows about the money, about the agreement, but she never took it. Evelyn's silence was confirmation enough. She raised 3 children alone, working herself to death, and never touched your blood money. Jason's voice cracked. And I called her a gold digger in court. I let my lawyers destroy her reputation. I sent her a wedding invitation to humiliate her. And all along, he couldn't finish. The weight of what he'd done, what he'd been complicit in even unknowingly, crushed the air from his lungs. Jason, please. Don't. He held up his hand. Don't say another word. I need to. I need to go. Where? Back to the wedding. Back to Emily. To try to fix even a fraction of what we've destroyed. She'll use this against you. She'll take you for everything you have. Jason looked at his mother one last time. Good, he said quietly. Maybe that's what I deserve. And he walked out of that hospital room, leaving Evelyn alone with her machines and her secrets and the consequences of her cruelty. Jason's car pulled up to the estate just as the sun began its descent toward the horizon. The golden light had turned orange, painting everything in shades of ending days. The guests who remained, and there were still plenty, because who could leave now, turned as one when they saw him emerge from his car. His tuxedo was a mess. His hair, usually perfectly styled, fell across his forehead. His eyes were red. He looked like a man who'd just had his entire worldview shattered. Madison rushed out of the mansion the moment she saw him. Jason, thank God. Is your mother? She's fine. His voice was flat. Where's Emily? Madison stopped, her face hardening. You're asking about her? Your ex-wife, who just crashed our wedding with your secret children. Yes, Madison. I'm asking about the mother of my 3 children. Where is she? The words hung in the air like a bomb that had just been dropped. Madison's face went through a series of expressions. Shock, hurt, fury, disbelief. So it's true, she whispered. They're really yours. Yes. You have 3 children you never told me about. I didn't know. Jason's voice cracked. I swear, Madison, I didn't know. But that doesn't matter now. I need to talk to Emily. What about me? What about our wedding? What about? There is no wedding. Jason said it gently but firmly. You must know that. After everything that's happened today, after everything that's come out, there's no way we can go through with this. Madison's perfectly made-up face crumpled. You're choosing her? After 3 years. I'm not choosing her. I'm choosing to take responsibility for what I did. For who I was. For the children I didn't know existed because my mother paid their mother to disappear. The gasps from nearby guests told Jason that everyone had heard. Good. Let them hear. Let the truth finally be out in the open where it belonged. Madison stared at him for a long moment, tears streaming down her face. Then, with the dramatic flair of someone who'd always known how to make an exit, she ripped off her engagement ring and threw it at his feet. You Williams men are all the same, she said, her voice shaking with rage and hurt. You think your money and your name give you the right to treat people like chess pieces. Well, I'm not a piece on your board, Jason. I'm done. And she turned and walked away, her wedding dress trailing behind her like a white flag of surrender. Jason watched her go and felt nothing. No regret, no loss. Just a hollow acknowledgement that he'd hurt another person and probably deserved every bit of her anger. He turned to the remaining guests. If you're all staying to watch the train wreck, you might as well have front row seats. I'm about to apologize to the woman I should never have divorced for crimes I didn't even know I'd committed. Someone laughed nervously. Someone else whispered, "This is better than reality TV." Jason didn't care. He walked toward the garden, toward the corner where Emily sat with his, their, children. Emily saw him coming and stood slowly. Mr. Benson moved protectively closer, but Emily waved him back. It's okay, she said quietly. Let him come. The triplets stirred. Emma woke first, rubbing her eyes. Then she saw Jason approaching, and her face lit up with innocent curiosity. Is that our daddy? She asked in that loud, clear voice that children have. The question stopped Jason in his tracks. He stared at the little girl, his daughter, God, his daughter, and his face crumpled. His voice broke. I don't know if I deserve to be called that. Emily's expression remained neutral, but something flickered in her eyes. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But maybe the tiniest crack in her armor. Emily, Jason said, stopping a few feet away. Close enough to talk, far enough to give her space. I just came from the hospital. My mother told me everything. About the money. About the agreement. About how she paid me $500,000 to disappear with any children that might result from our marriage. Emily's voice was calm, almost conversational. Yes, Jason. I know. I was there when I signed the papers. But you never cashed the check. No, I didn't. Why? Emily looked at him. Really looked at him. And Jason saw the woman he'd once loved buried somewhere under the successful, powerful person she'd become. But she was different now. Harder. Wiser. Impossible to manipulate or control. Because I didn't want your family's blood money, Emily said simply. I didn't want anything from people who thought love could be bought and sold. I wanted to raise my children free from that toxicity. So why come here? Why now? Why bring them to my wedding? Emily smiled, but it wasn't kind. Because you sent me an invitation specifically designed to humiliate me. You assumed I was still the broken woman you left behind. You wanted me to see your perfect life with your perfect bride and feel small. And I realized you needed to see what you'd thrown away, what you'd lost, what you'd never even known you had. Jason looked at the three small faces staring up at him with curiosity and wariness. His children, his blood, 3 years of birthdays and first words and milestones he'd missed. I didn't know, he whispered. Emily, I swear I didn't know. If you had known what? You would have kept me. Emily's voice turned sharp. Jason, you called me a burden in open court. You let your lawyers paint me as a gold digger. You destroyed my reputation, took everything I had, and walked away without looking back. The only reason you care now is because your mother's secret came out. That's not fair. Fair. Emily's laugh was harsh. You want to talk to me about fair? I worked 3 jobs while pregnant with triplets. I slept 3 hours a night. I gave birth alone in a hospital with no husband, no family, no support system. I built everything I have now from nothing, while you were planning the perfect wedding with your perfect replacement wife. Don't you dare talk to me about fair. The guests who drifted closer to listen were dead silent now. Phone cameras were recording every word. This would be on social media before the night was over. Jason knew he should care about his reputation, about how this looked. But he didn't. For the first time in his life, he cared more about the truth than about appearances. You're right, he said quietly. None of this is fair, and I don't deserve forgiveness. I don't even deserve to know their names. But Emily, his voice cracked, they're my children. I can't change the past 3 years. I can't undo what I did to you. But please, don't make them pay for my mistakes. Emily was quiet for a long moment. The triplets watched their mother, sensing the importance of what was happening even if they didn't understand it. Finally, she spoke. Their names are Ethan, Elijah, and Emma. They're smart, kind, funny, and completely innocent in all of this. They've been asking about their father since they were old enough to notice other kids had daddies, and they didn't. Jason's knees buckled slightly. What did you tell them? I told them their father was a complicated man who made hard choices. I never called you a bad person. I never poisoned them against you. Because that's not who I am, Jason. Unlike your mother, I don't believe in using children as weapons. The barb hit home. Jason flinched. What do you want, he asked. Name it. Anything. Money, support, a place in their lives with boundaries you control. Whatever you need, I'll do it. Emily studied him. You don't get it yet, do you? I don't need anything from you. I have my own money now. More than your mother offered me. Actually, I have a successful business, a beautiful home, and 3 incredible children who want for nothing. Then why are you here? Because they deserve to know their father, if he's worthy of knowing them. Emily's eyes were steel. But understand this, Jason, you don't get to waltz into their lives because it's convenient now. You don't get to play daddy when it suits your schedule and disappear when it doesn't. If you want to be in their lives, you prove it. Consistently. Over years, not weeks. I will. I swear I will. Words are easy. Actions are what matter. You're welcome to get to know them. Supervised visits at first. You'll meet them on my terms, in my home, at times that work for their schedule, not yours. You'll show up when you say you will, every single time, or you're out. You'll be the father they deserve, or you'll be nothing to them. Do you understand? Jason nodded, tears streaming down his face now. I understand. Emma, who'd been watching this entire exchange with her big, curious eyes, suddenly slipped off the bench and walked over to Jason. She stopped right in front of him, tilting her head to study his face. You look sad, she said simply. Jason crouched down to her level, bringing himself eye to eye with his daughter for the first time. I am sad, sweetheart. Very sad. Why? Because I missed you. All 3 of you. And I didn't even know I was missing you, which makes it even sadder. Emma considered this with the serious expression of someone much older than 3. Then she reached out and patted his cheek gently. It's okay, she said. Mommy says everybody makes mistakes. You just have to say sorry and try better. The simple wisdom of a child broke something in Jason that had been holding together by threads. He pulled his daughter into a hug, gentle, uncertain, asking permission even as he did it. Emma hugged him back without hesitation, the way children do before the world teaches them to be suspicious. Ethan and Elijah watched from the bench. Ethan, the more cautious one, stayed where he was. But Elijah, after a moment, slid down and walked over too. "Are you really our daddy?" he asked. "Yes," Jason said, his voice muffled against Emma's shoulder. "I really am. Mommy showed us pictures. You look the same but older. I am older, and hopefully a little wiser." Elijah seemed to accept this. He didn't hug Jason, but he stood close enough that his small hand brushed Jason's arm. It was tentative, a beginning, not an ending. Emily watched all this with an expression that was impossible to read. Pain maybe, or hope, or just exhaustion from carrying this weight alone for so long. The sun had set by now. String lights that had been meant to illuminate a wedding reception instead lit up the most public humbling Texas society had seen in decades. The guests, those who remained, had witnessed everything. The confrontation, the children, the tears, the truth. An older woman, one of the society matriarchs who'd been friends with Evelyn Williams for 40 years, approached Jason as he stood with Emily and the children. "Jason Williams," she said, her voice carrying across the garden. "Your mother and I have been friends for longer than you've been alive. But what she did to this young woman and these children is unforgivable. And what you did, divorcing a good woman for appearances, is equally shameful." Jason opened his mouth to respond, but the woman held up her hand. "However," she continued, "acknowledging your mistakes publicly, as you've just done, takes more courage than I thought you had. Don't waste this chance. Those children deserve better than what you've been." She turned to Emily. "And you, dear, you've shown remarkable strength and grace. Your business, from what I understand, is quite impressive. If you ever need investors or connections, you call me." She handed Emily a business card. Women who build empires from nothing deserve support. Other guests began approaching, some to condemn Jason, others to praise Emily, a few to simply bear witness to the truth. One of Jason's groomsmen, a friend since college, clapped him on the shoulder. "Man, you really screwed this up. But at least you're owning it now. Those kids are lucky they got their mother's character." A young woman, one of Madison's bridesmaids, approached Emily. "I just want to say, you're my hero. Seriously, the way you walked in here, the way you handled everything, that's power." The videos were already spreading online. #Williams wedding scandal was trending nationwide. But the narrative wasn't what Jason's family would have wanted. People weren't condemning Emily for crashing the wedding. They were condemning Jason for abandoning his children. They were condemning Evelyn for her manipulation. They were celebrating Emily's success story and her grace under pressure. By morning, Jason Williams would be a cautionary tale. Emily Carter would be an inspiration. And those 3 children would be the innocent victims everyone wanted to protect. As the last guests finally left, as the catering staff began cleaning up the remains of the wedding that never was, Emily prepared to leave. Mr. Benson had brought the car around. The triplets were tired, ready to go home to their own beds and their normal life. Jason watched them preparing to leave with something like panic in his eyes. "When can I see them again?" Emily considered. "Next Saturday, 2 o'clock. My house. You'll have 2 hours with them, with me present. If that goes well, we'll discuss next steps." "That's more than I deserve." "Yes," Emily agreed. "It is. But I'm not doing this for you, Jason. I'm doing it for them. Every child deserves a chance to know their father. If he's willing to be one, I will be. I promise. We'll see." Emily herded the children toward the car. "Ethan, Elijah, Emma, say goodbye." The children waved. Emma called out, "Bye, Daddy. See you Saturday." The word daddy hit Jason like a physical blow. He waved back, trying to smile through tears. As the Rolls-Royce pulled away down that tree-lined driveway, Jason stood alone in the ruins of his wedding, watching the taillights disappear into the Texas night. His perfect life had imploded. His bride had left him. His mother's cruelty had been exposed. His reputation was destroyed. And somehow, impossibly, Jason felt more clear-headed than he had in years. Because for the first time since he'd met Emily Carter in that charity event 6 years ago, he wasn't performing. He wasn't trying to be the golden boy or the perfect CEO or the dutiful son. He was just a man who'd made catastrophic mistakes and had been given an impossible second chance, whether he deserved it or not. 6 months can change everything. Emily's business had exploded even further after the wedding scandal, with her story inspiring millions of women. She'd turned down every interview request, every book deal, every attempt to cash in on the drama. She didn't need the money or the attention. The triplets were thriving. Ethan had started pre-K and was already reading at a first-grade level. Elijah had discovered a love for building things. Emma wanted to be a doctor, like the nice lady who helped Grandma. And Jason? Jason showed up every Saturday at 2 o'clock. He never missed once. He came to birthday parties. He attended school events. He learned how to braid Emma's hair, badly, but he tried. He built block towers with Elijah. He read bedtime stories to Ethan. He didn't try to buy their love with expensive gifts. He didn't show up with grand gestures. He just showed up, consistently, the way Emily had demanded. Slowly, cautiously, the children had begun to accept him, not as a replacement for anything. Emily had made sure they knew she was their primary parent, but as an addition to their lives. Evelyn had tried to reach out to Jason once. He declined the call. Whatever relationship they'd had was over. Some bridges, once burned, shouldn't be rebuilt. Madison had gotten engaged again, to a tech entrepreneur who reportedly treated her like a queen. Emily had sent her a congratulations card. No hard feelings. Madison had been a pawn in someone else's game, just like Emily had been. And as for Emily and Jason, they weren't together. That ship had sailed, burned, and sunk long ago. But they'd found something maybe more important than romance. Mutual respect. They co-parented effectively. They communicated about the children's needs. They attended school events together without making it awkward. They'd built something new from the ashes of what they'd destroyed. One Saturday evening, after Jason had finished his weekly visit, as Emily was walking him to the door, he stopped. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for giving me this chance. For not shutting me out completely." Emily leaned against the doorframe. "I didn't do it for you. I know. But still, thank you. You're welcome." She paused. "You're doing better than I expected, honestly. The kids are starting to trust you. They have a good mother. They know how to recognize when someone's being genuine." Emily smiled slightly. "They do, don't they?" Jason hesitated, then asked the question he'd been wondering for months. "Do you ever think about what might have been? If I'd been strong enough to stand up to my mother? If I'd fought for us instead of listening to her poison?" Emily considered this. "Sometimes," she admitted. "But then I remember that the person I am now, the business I built, the strength I found, I only became this because you left. If you'd stayed, I might have remained that woman who worked 2 jobs and believed she wasn't good enough for your world. So maybe things happened exactly as they needed to. That's generous of you. It's honest." Emily opened the door. "Besides, we have 3 pretty amazing kids who wouldn't exist if everything hadn't happened exactly as it did. So I can't regret the journey, even if parts of it were hell." Jason nodded, stepping out into the evening air. "Same time next week?" "Same time next week." He walked to his car, then turned back. "Emily? Yeah. You were always good enough. I was just too blind and weak to see it." And with that, Jason Williams drove away, leaving Emily standing in her doorway, successful, independent, and finally at peace with the complicated truth of her story. So what did we learn from Emily and Jason's story? We learned that revenge doesn't always look like destruction. Sometimes it looks like success, like building the life your enemies said you couldn't have. We learned that secrets have a way of surfacing, no matter how much money you throw at keeping them buried. We learned that children are both more resilient and more perceptive than adults give them credit for. They forgive faster, but remember everything. We learned that true strength isn't about never falling down. It's about what you build when you get back up. And most importantly, we learned that you can't undo the past, but you can choose, every single day, to be better than you were yesterday. Jason Williams lost everything the day Emily walked into his wedding. His bride, his reputation, his perfect image. But he gained something infinitely more valuable. 3 children who would grow up knowing their father fought to be in their lives. And the possibility, just the possibility, of becoming the man he should have been all along. As for Emily, she'd already won long before she ever stepped out of that limousine. Because the best revenge isn't destroying the person who hurt you. It's becoming so successful, so happy, so completely fine without them that they realize exactly what they lost. And then, if you're generous enough, giving them the smallest chance to be part of your world again. On your terms. Always on your terms. Now it's your turn to weigh in, and I want to hear from you honestly. 1. Do you think Emily should have told Jason about the triplets when she first found out she was pregnant? Or was she right to protect her children from his family's toxicity? ***. 2. Does Jason deserve the second chance Emily gave him? Or are some betrayals too deep to ever truly move past? ***. 3. What would you have done in Emily's position? Would you have shown up at that wedding? Or would you have let your ex live in ignorance? ***. 4. And here's the big one. Do you believe people can truly change? Or do they just become better at hiding who they've always been? ***. Drop your answers in the comments right now. Let's have a real conversation about accountability, second chances, and whether success really is the best revenge. If this story made you think, made you feel something, made you want to text that person who underestimated you and show them how far you've come, smash that like button. Share this video with someone who needs to hear that their worth isn't determined by who rejected them. Subscribe to this channel because every week, we bring you stories about real people, real mistakes, and real redemption. Remember, the people who count you out are often counting on you staying down. Your job isn't to prove them wrong, it's to prove yourself right. And sometimes, the best thing you can do for the people who hurt you is to let them watch you thrive. Until next time, keep building your empire, keep protecting your peace, and never, ever let anyone make you feel small again.